I actually named this talk probably about 1.5 years ago before I realized there was going to be a really terrifying live-action Cats the Musical movie, so this actually has nothing to do with Cats the Musical, but I like the name. So my name is Beth, like Nikhil said. I am a software developer at Thoughtbot in San Francisco, and I would like to warn you all that in the next few minutes, you are likely going to encounter some very poor singing, too many cat gifs, and some very, very questionable code. So, I've been told by a few people that one of my strengths is thinking outside of the box, or as I like to call it, being really good at coming up with stupid ideas. So, some of my bad ideas have included Feces Book, a social media website for your poo, kombucha, really boozy kombucha. For those of you who don't know, kombucha is a tea drink, and apparently, people are already on this bandwagon, so I wasn't the first with that idea. Another idea is birth announcements, but for features that you release at work. I don't have a name for that one yet, so if you have any ideas, please come see me. There's also a Meowifier. It's a US-based anti-social network for your cat. And I actually built and released to a smaller market in Omaha, Nebraska, where I used to live. It's called Meowha. So a little bit about me. I have a little bit more background that will become necessary for you to understand why I built this application that I did build. So this is me and my husband Samit. We got married in a bar to the disappointment of both of our parents. It's not the relevant part. We also have 2 cats. This is Xiaogui, and this is Gita. We are a multilingual household. Also relevant, we were really into Game of Thrones. So this was Halloween, right after season 1 aired, back in 2011. Impossible to tell the difference, right? We're just yeah, we're here for it. So you might be confused about why I'm sharing all these random details with you. I'm about to tell you. Okay, so imagine it's 2011 to 2019, Sunday night, depending on which time zone you're in, could be 7, 8, who knows. But it's Sunday evening and you hear this song. Okay, so some of you probably know what that is. That's the Game of Thrones theme song. And it's an instrumental score. There are no lyrics, right? Or are there? There are if you add them yourself. So we are going to do a little experiment. We are going to meow. And why are we going to meow? Well, why not? Every song deserves some lyrics. So I'm going to get us started, and you're all going to join in, okay? All right. Meow, 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 meow. Nice, thank you, everybody. We sound pretty good. So we just meowified the Game of Thrones theme song together. Maybe we set a world record. I don't know how many people are here, but so Meowifier is just one idea in a long line of bad ideas I've come up with over the years. And it seems like a really interesting problem to solve. So 3-ish years ago, I decided, you know what the hell, I'm gonna go ahead and build it. And how does it work? Well, you upload a song's audio file, and Meowifier outputs a new audio file with that song's melody sung by cats. So I wish I could say there's such a thing as a cat choir. I Googled it, nothing came up. So it was all up to me to figure out. One thing I like to mention is that when I built this program, I was only 6 months into my programming career. But I'm kind of an activator. If you guys have ever taken the Gallup Strengths Finder, Activator is my #1, and I'm I get an idea, I'm gonna do it. So I was ready, I was let's do this. So, as a new developer, I had some big challenges. But what I had going for me was that I had already read POODR, or Practical Object-Oriented Design Patterns in Ruby, by Sandy Metz. So for those of you not familiar. So thanks to Sandy Metz, I knew that I needed to make my classes really simple. Or a better way of putting it, single responsibility classes. So for example, you'll see later that I designed my application so that I could easily swap out my melody analyzer. I didn't want my logic for my analyzers to be coupled with my note converters, for example. And I also decided that this application was going to be 100% test-driven because after only 6 months of programming professionally, I had already dealt with enough legacy code to last me a lifetime. So if you're anything like me, you might have a hard time determining what a single responsibility actually means. So focusing on testing also helped me narrow that down because anytime I found a class that was hard to test, I thought to myself, maybe there's too much going on here. And so what I ended up with was each class only took one type of input, like the path to a song, and was expected to return a single type of information, like a serialized melody. So I had some standards set in place. It was time to get started. And I had 3 big challenges. So the first one is finding a way to obtain the notes of only the melody of a song's audio file. 2, correcting your meow length to match the length of the note in the melody. And 3, creating a multi-octave library of meows. So it is pretty easy for a human, especially one with any musical training, to pick up the melody of a song. So it's the principal part of a song, but pretty much every song you hear on the radio is polyphonic, which just means there's more than one note going on at a time, like background noise, bass, drums. So if you were listening to Bohemian Rhapsody by Queen, the melody would be the part Freddie Mercury is singing. Mama just killed a man, or I see a little silhouette of a man. So that is the melody. I wanted to keep it simple, no bass line, no harmony. So compared to a human brain, computers are pretty unintelligent, right? So writing an algorithm a computer can use to extract the melody is super complicated. You're probably wondering if I wrote one. No, I did what every experienced programmer does and searched the internet until I found a tool that might work so that I didn't have to write anything from scratch. And it was super hard to find anything. But I did find a tool called Sonic API. And it offers professional-grade audio technology with high-quality, world-class algorithms. So it seemed like giving a shot. So I have a simple song parser class. Inside this class, I have a parse method. So all I need to do is pass in the proper parameters to the HTTP call. So that's the song file in my key, and it's supposed to extract the melody for me. So this is an example of what the response I get back looks like. So except imagine literally hundreds of lines. So this happens to be the first few notes of the Game of Thrones theme song. So let's take a closer look at one of these. So there's 4 pieces of data per note. So MIDI pitch maps to the pitch of a note. Because only whole MIDI pitch numbers map to what we think of as standard notes, like on a keyboard, I had to round the note up or down before I could map it. So this MIDI pitch would be rounded up to 36. And MIDI, which is short for Musical Instrument Digital Interface, is a technical standard. It allows electronic musical instruments from different manufacturers to communicate with one another. So this is where 36 lands in MIDI. So it's the C 2 octaves down from middle C, for those of you who are visual or pianists or percussionists, if you play marimba. It helps me visualize a note on the keyboard. So this is where the C is, down there at the bottom. And I'm lucky that MIDI is standardized because I just went ahead and made these constants in my note converter class. So this comes into play after I've parsed my song. So you can see that MIDI note 36 corresponds to C2. And I have a method in my song parser class that adds the standard pitch, the C2, to each line in my collection using these constants. So this set of information now has 5 pieces of data. That note is tacked on the end. So now I have all of my notes mapped to the correct pitch. So instead of this, now I have this, unintelligible either way. So if you're wondering what's next, it's note length. So now I need to correct the meow length to match the length of the note in the melody. And so the melody is going to have notes of varying lengths. So when you go back to Bohemian Rhapsody, Freddie doesn't hold each note for like half a second each. Some of it's longer, some of them are shorter, so it's not Mama just killed a man. It's Mama just killed a man. So obviously I can't have a meow folder containing a file of every conceivable length, so I needed to find a tool that could either cut or extend my meow to fill the proper amount of time. So again, I'm a programmer. So I want to find the easy way out, right? There's no need to reinvent the wheel. I just need to find a tool that can alter the length of multimedia files. And it was actually pretty easy to find ffmpeg, because it's been around forever, and by forever I mean 20 years. The only problem I came across is that it almost had too many options. So it took quite a bit of Stack Overflowing, if I can use that as a verb, to find exactly what I needed. And so this part took me the longest to configure, and I went through many, many iterations until I found what I needed. And I ended up with this very, very questionable code. This is such a messy method. Look at all those conditionals. So, like I said, this took me quite a while to figure it out. So by the time I was done, I was like, I'm done. So since it's so messy, I'm going to walk you through it. You don't need to understand everything on the screen. But what happens is we passed in the parsed song. So remember this collection? So we passed that in. And at this point, I need to tell you something. There is a library of meow files already living in my application. We're going to talk more in depth about those in a bit. But you just need to know that there are a few dozen short audio files, each with a meow in a different pitch, like the ones you find on a piano. And so this is the part of my code that creates a meow of the correct duration. So the first piece of logic, the if statement, shortens my meow file, while the else statement lengthens it. So my ultimate solution for short notes is fairly simple. When the length of the extracted note was shorter than the library file, make a copy of the file, then trim the end to get the file to the correct length. So I have visuals here. So the duration of the note is less than the length of the note to adjust. Just cut it down, which ffmpeg gives me the ability to do, granted I passed the correct arguments in. So it's a bit trickier with long notes. And there are a few ways I could have gone about it. But my first iteration, what I ended up doing was, if the length of the extracted note is longer than the meow library file, keep duplicating the file until it's longer than the extracted note, combine them all into one file, and you shorten it down to match the length of the analyzed note. Don't worry, more diagrams. So here's my logic. Again, not necessary to understand. I'm going to explain it. It also happens to be one of the long lists of to-do items. And you might be able to figure it out on your own, but I'm going to tell you why in a bit. So first you find the number of loops. So it's simple math. Take the note length divided by the file length, which is 2.46 here. And then I use the ceil method in Ruby, which returns the smallest integer greater than or equal to a float, which is 3. So I use ffmpeg in this method to loop my file 3 times. And then I combine it together to make a single 3-second file. And then much like that method that shortens my notes, I just crop my file now and save it. So this isn't the most ideal solution. So the issue is that for longer notes, instead of one long, steady, sustained meow, there are going to be duplicate meows in this 2.4-second file. So if I wanted a more accurate sounding note, I would have done something like this. So for each note in my song, split the meow up into 3 different parts, then duplicate the middle of the meow. So now I have my beginning of my meow, my end of my meow, and a bunch of intermediate meow in the middle. Then combine it together, shorten that middle meow section, and then combine that. So there are a lot of ways I could have figured out long notes, but my first iteration was good enough. I had my proof of concept working. Everything was pretty good. So all those files get stored in an array, and then the last part of this step is to combine all of the files together in my song builder class, which is what I do here. So third problem, this is where we get into the meows themselves. So I needed to create a multi-octave library of meows, and that's a lot of meows. So if you hadn't noticed, very few cats meow in the tenor, baritone, bass ranges. So I had to make my own custom library using some interesting tactics. So it starts out like this, except me and not a cat. So I'm sitting at my piano, playing a note, and then trying to sing it, but I'm always a tiny bit flat. You just heard me sing, and my piano needs to be tuned. So this wasn't working out so well. So my next step is like singing into my laptop with like, I have a tuner app on my phone, so I'm trying to like match that perfectly. And I got about half an octave's worth of notes before I realized this was going to take forever and I was going to lose my voice. So turns out I only recorded 5 notes. But at this point, I just want to see if it's actually working. Like I knew one song that only had 5 notes in it, so I manually entered it into my test. And my test passes! But still, I was like, this isn't gonna cut it. So I went back to the internet, finally found a few octaves of an auto-tuned man meowing on a free sound website called Freesound, of all things. So here's my library, and if you're wondering, so a keyboard has 88 notes. If you're wondering, like, this doesn't look like 88 notes, you're right, it is not 88 notes. It's only about 49 notes, which spans about 4 octaves. So what was I gonna do if an analyzed note fell outside the range of my meow library? Well, I wrote some code instead of going the harder route, and I just modified my octaves. So anything that was above an F6 would get, so an F7 would get adjusted down to an F6. So let's see what this sounds like. Not quite what I had in mind. So I had just taken all that, I took that time to adjust my app to fit with this library, and you're like, I'm still not happy with it. So I just bit the bullet and made my own cat meow library. And it spans nearly the whole keyboard. Now I had 88 notes, and the moment you've all been waiting for, almost. Remember, this is what we're going for. There we go. Okay, ready? So there are some problems. I don't know if you noticed, but that doesn't sound like the Game of Thrones theme song. So I have a problem with my melody analyzer, it turns out. My melody analyzer was picking up all the notes, not just the melody. And it turns out melody analytics is really, really difficult. So what was I going to do? Well, I decide, you know what? There are no good tools for me that are free, and this is a side project, by the way. I have a full-time job. I don't have time for this. So I decide to pivot slightly. And Shazam, literally Shazam, you know the song identifier app? So what if I use an audio footprint analyzer like Shazam to figure out which song a user has uploaded to my application? Then I have my app scrape the internet for an existing MIDI version of that song, and then I meowify that using my meow library. So I did a proof of concept, again with some MIDI files, and I created a sound font, which is a MIDI font, but for sound. That's like equally parts like terrifying and awesome. So like, my second concept, hey, it actually works. But melody extraction is really hard. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna move forward with this other idea. So is it anybody's birthday today in here? Somebody up there, what's your name? Denasia? Happy birthday, Denisha. So, like I said, melody extraction's hard, and sometimes things don't work out the way that you actually plan them to work out. And most of the time, nobody else has to know that unless you publicly tell them about it. So I want to thank you all for coming on this journey with me. You can find my slides on Speaker Deck. Keep an eye out. I will hopefully be releasing Meowifier to the public soon. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me in person or on Twitter. Thank you again.